Welcome everyone. This is a session in which we discuss answer writing for essay paper in UPSC in particular. Essay paper has always been something that either people get it right or get it wrong. So there's a lot of discussion that is always required. And I thought I'm going to discuss particularly two essay topics. We are going to see like sort of understanding how essay topics are changing. What are the recent challenges that are posed by UPSC in past few years, so you should be prepared for it. But then overall, the understanding here is that how do we cope up with what is being done, and sort of what can be done in answer writing to as they say, put your best foot forward. So you want to always present yourself in the best possible manner, and so it in a way we are going to discuss that with whatever you're prepared at whatever stage of preparation you are, how do you present yourself in the best possible manner. Now I've always been saying in my essay classes, in different webinars, in different modules that I have been conducting, that essay writing requires a lot of attention that people think it does. That is for two reasons. One, because it is a complete 250 marks paper in your scheme of GS. And second is just preparing in a robust manner for other GS topics does not automatically prepare you for writing good essays, because having knowledge is different than being able to articulate it. So the articulation, being able to say it in words, and the words which are appropriate, is a different skill than just having the knowledge. And so how do you bridge these things together also remains sort of something that people should attempt to get, in the sense, if you can put together these two things, you have knowledge and you also have worked on your articulation, you have worked on your language, you have worked on making good arguments, and when these two things come together, it generally becomes a very good sort of combination to get good marks in essay writing. Having said that, you should also know trends of the exam. So, see, this is a competitive exam. We are not here to sort of do our masters in creative writing or do our masters in writing. So, we are here to sort of, to prepare ourselves for a part of the examination. And so in that sense, while you're preparing while you're sort of accumulating good knowledge, preparing for writing, working on your articulation skills, it is also important that you strategize this whole thing. In the sense, you should know what are the trends of essay topics that get asked, what are the kinds of topics which never will be asked, what are the topics that are generally favored by students, writing which topics will pose more competition, which topics will have it'll be easier to write, but then so you might face more competition. On the other hand, some topics might be very difficult to write, but then you will face less competition because less people end up writing about that. So it's like, it's a trade-off between these choices, and you also need to ultimately have a style of your own when you write. Today, to begin with, I'm very happy to say that while we conducted test series in Unique Academy, two of the topics that we had asked in test series actually were asked in this year's UPSC main exam. And you would see now that it's almost similar, it's almost the same topic that is being asked. And we're glad that slowly and steadily, when we study things properly, we sort of get a knack of, we get a sort of, a good judgment of what might get asked. So one thing I'm going to, before we start talking about the essay topics, one thing I surely want to tell all of you, that please see what are the trends. For example, if education, a topic about education is asked this year, what is the likelihood that will be asked next year? Or after how many years generally topics like education or women empowerment or international relations are repeated? Are they repeated very often? Are they not repeated very often? Are things that you should ask yourself, because that matters a lot. Because you for the year that you're preparing, only certain topics are going to be relevant. If something about international relations was asked the earlier year, previous year, the likelihood that a topic about international relationships will be asked again next year is very low. What might happen is, if there is a current event which is so big, which is so sort of um, important that even though it was about international relations, you cannot not ask about that. Only then it might get repeated, but then even then it doesn't get repeated, even if events of great magnitude and importance happen. Generally UPS is careful about not repeating topics, not repeating the themes, and that is also something you need to prepare. So otherwise it should not be an effort which is just lot of slogging, which is just lot of work, but then not directed in the right manner, right? So you should channelize all your energies that you're going to spend for essay writing in a manner in which it will be fruitful when you actually write. So you should have a good judgment of which year you have a realistic chance of writing mains, and then properly analyze the topics which have come, let's say 3 or 4 years before that year, and then have a judgment about what might be asked, right? So let us see what were the topics that were given in unique test series, and what were the topics that were asked in actual essay exam. Now it's clear that we cannot discuss 8 topics because it's beyond not only this time limit, it might require good 4 or 5 hours to do that, right? So we are not going to be able to discuss all. So I'm going to keep the discussion limited to 2 topics, but then we'll try and go in depth for these 2 topics, right? So this also, what I'm going to show you is also part of model answers that we provided for candidates who are writing mains this year. So every year when we have test series, we provide model answers for all subjects. So when we gave tests, when we set tests for essay writing, model answers were given. So anybody I feel who had written these tests were pretty much prepared. And also the good thing is 2 of the topics that were asked in unique test series appeared in 2 different sections in essay paper actually. So you could attempt one from section A and one from section B, and they were almost similar. Let me put up the PDF where I can show you the essay topics, and also then we can follow it up with some discussion. This is not going to be a very long discussion, maybe an hour long. We will discuss it for 1 hour. So if you have any questions while I'm speaking, if you're in the Zoom meeting, please write it in your chat box. If you're on YouTube, watching on YouTube, please write it in comments there. Once I take a small break from speaking, I can see those questions and answer them to best of my capacity. Let's look at the comparison of essay topics. UPSC main exam 2020 essay topic section A. So the topic that you see here, ships, was actually the topic which was asked in UPSC, and you might already know that because I'm confident that you have seen this year's paper. Ships do not sink because water around them. Ships sink because of water that gets into them. Right now, this was asked in section A, and we'll see what it means and how to interpret the metaphor of ships and water outside and water inside. But then we had asked a pretty similar topic. This was the topic that we had asked for unique test series. More trees are brought down by termites than by axe. So do you know what are termites? Termites are small insects that sort of completely eat up wood. So that's what is termite. And so it is to say that again, what is harmful for something is within it than outside of it. So axe is like, a person needs to go and cut the tree, but then even that is not required. More trees are brought down, more trees actually perish because of what is inside of them than the axe. Now again, this is very metaphorical. This is not to say we are not cutting down trees. This is to say that what harms something is within it. Now this is a kind of a topic which I'm going to say, if you want to categorize the topic, it's an expository essay. What do we mean by expository essay? So there is a site to be taken, and that site has already been taken. It is not available for you to change the stance of the topic. So if you choose this topic, if you choose any of these topics, you have to say that elements which are inside the system are more harmful sometimes than those of outside threats, right? And if you think it's the other way around, if you think the real threat is enemy, real threat is outside of the system, you should not choose this topic. This topic is where you agree with the premise, you agree with what is being said in this sentence, you agree with the fact that the problems within the system can be more harmful than problems outside of the system. If you agree with this premise, if you agree with the basic premise that this topic is making, only then it makes sense to write this. Now again, in this case, as I was saying, it's an expository essay and it's a pretty wide context. It is as good as a quotation. Can you see there is no mention of any current affairs, there is no mention of any concepts from polity, governance, democracy, economics. So there are no concepts per se from GS that you can directly borrow and use it here. So it is for you, it is up to you, where do you want to take it, right? So I have given some of the ways in which you could interpret first the topic and then sort of think about in which ways you want to take it. Again, it's a very simple topic to interpret. There is not much challenge here. Only again and again, I'm just at the cost of repeating, I'll say that it is about understanding that when you want to become successful, when you want to sustain, when you want to be when you want to exist, the problems might be within you and not outside of you. So this is what it says. Now you can take it from person to society to family to community to country to world. As I said, the scope is very wide. Let's look at some of the things that are already being. So this, I was saying, the bullet points that you can see now, which are following the topic, were given as model answers. And I also want all of us to see that model answers actually provide a lot of insight, even if, let's say, this topic was not asked this time. I think I will also tell you why did we select this topic, but then for whatever reason we selected this topic, even if you don't use those pointers, it still can be a wonderful essay, right? So let's look at what were some of the interpretations that we had. The only thing that is constant in the world is the change. Some changes are good for us, while some other changes are harmful. Some changes are noticeable and sometimes sudden and dramatic, while some changes are very slow and unnoticeable. Very often, due to intensity of sudden and dramatic changes, people often perceive them as harmful or hazardous than those changes that are slow. Now, see, this is where you are also now qualifying what is given in the statement. So, it is to say that, let's stick with this tree example, for example. It is to say that tree is alive and flourishing, and it changes to it moves towards slow decay and then dies, right? It is brought down. The tree dies. Now, this change is seen and perceived as a very big thing if it is sudden. So if it is cut down by axe, it is noticeable that somebody did it suddenly. But then if it happens slowly because of the decay from inside, decay because of the termites, decay because you should know what is termites. Termite in Marathi is walvi, right? So termites is a small insect that eats up the wood. So if it is happening because of the termite, because the change is slow, because the process of decay is slow, many times it will not even be observed. It will go unobserved for a long time. While something happens quickly, then it can be seen. Now, I'm going to not read this for a while and immediately take you to a current affairs where somebody could have written, like, if somebody wants to write this essay today, you could have written this. For example, what happened in US, the insurrection at Capitol Hill, that was done by US citizens, right? They actually went inside the Senate, they defiled the sanctity of the Senate, and they attacked elected representatives. And I'm sure you know what happened on 6th of January on Capitol Hill. Now, if that happened, these are the people from inside, right? And what you can see is sudden attack. But what we cannot see is what it might have taken to build up this kind of violence, the time it must have taken to sort of for these people to gather the confidence to actually go and attack their own Senate. And so these sudden things are seen, but in what happens slowly cannot be seen. Right at the bat, you could write something. I mean, people who wrote it was later than that, but then I'm just saying that anybody who attempts to write this now can instantly connect it with the first factor, because in bringing down of the trees or bringing down of the ships, sinking of the ships, what is slow and what is sudden needs to be paid attention to, right? I'm going to read here. Rather, a close examination would reveal that things that undergo change without being noticed often acquire monstrous proportion and eventually cause the upheaval in the society, be it economic sphere, social sphere, political sphere, technological sphere, or environmental sphere. See, in all these things, when changes happen slowly, they are not noticeable, but then ultimately they prove to be disastrous. They can be of monstrous proportions, right? Uh, Now, uh, because this is a kind of a quotation, I'm going to keep this here for a few minutes, and you could read the second paragraph. These are more interpretations of how this quote could have been understood. So this quote, which we had given for three and the exam had given for ships, could have been understood in different manners. Now, what we have done in the first, we are saying, okay, it can exist in social, economic, political, technological. What are the issues within these spheres is also said here. So I'm going to keep it here for maybe 30 seconds and just read it once, and then I'll say a few more things. Okay, if you have read what has been highlighted here, you could see that the same topic could be used for gender-based violence, communal rights, caste-based discriminations, genocides, and so on. So topics like these are actually very interesting because you could take them to any sort of stage that you want to. And again, please be careful while choosing what you're saying. Better choose something that you can write something in depth. In cases like these, generally we say, and I have said it many times before, that when topics are slightly interpretative, where there's scope for interpretation, go for the range. So show range of ideas that you can present. Do not take just gender and then discuss lots of nuances of gender, but then also think about rights, also think about communal violence, also think about caste discriminations, genocides. However, while I say that there should be this range of topics that should be covered, it is also true that some of these topics you should be able to discuss in depth. Otherwise, what happens, it seems like something that even a person who had just finished his 10th standard can write, because people know, like a person who's, let's say, reasonably well read and has some insight into these things can say, okay, India is facing with these issues, India is facing with poverty, India is facing with unemployment, coping up with pandemic. So person who is like, let's say, done 10th or 12th also can say these things. But then what are you going to add? For you have studied till graduation, you've finished your graduation, perhaps many of you have done your masters. It needs to show, it needs to reflect in some kind of depth that you sort of address in your essay. So while you can discuss any topic and show that the factors which are inside of us are more harmful than factors that are outside of us, make sure that some of those things you know in depth. Some of the things you can write as a small paragraph, and just introduce the topic. So for example, you might not know a lot about, let's say, racial discrimination in the US, but then you might know that a major divide in the country, in their country, is based on racial division. And at this point, maybe terrorism is not their first thing on mind, but then the racial divide within their country is what they are struggling to cope with. So it's enough to say, and you might not have, like, sort of expertise over US politics, but then it's enough to say that you know that these things exist. Now, not only about US, you might know something about, let's say, Italy or Japan or Australia. And if you have seen if you have read some of those things on similar lines, you could say that also. And again, why just go international? You could write within country, you could write a comparative analysis of states within India. So for, you could say, like, if you want to say, let's say, caste based discrimination, you could think about relatively progressive states, and what are known as Bimaru states, right? So, how caste-based discrimination has threatened the prosperity of the country more than, let's say, larger policies that is center is drawing for us. So you could talk about that also. So as I was saying, it to a great extent it depends on where do you know depth. So choose only those lines of arguments where you are sure that you will be able to talk in depth, right? So this was about saying that you could go to different issues. Another way of discussing the whole same thing could also be about people and leaders and a single person within system who can bring down the system. Again and again, I feel tempted to talk about the US because recently it has been happening. Now they have a new president. So but then you could speak well about India. You could speak about situations wherein, you know, a person within the system is responsible for bringing down the system. So not threats from outside. Just give me a second. So not threats from outside, but then actually threats from inside, and even one person could do this, right? So again, here a lot of examples could be given. So for example, I'm going here with the same theme that the origin of the anti-democratic behavior can be easily traced back to those small violations which were often overlooked in the or was defended. So when you talk about bringing down democracy, so if you want to see, there's another way you could equate ship, what is given in the UPSC topic, or tree, that which is given in unique test series, to democracy. So if democracy is a ship, what is going to bring it down? Is it going to be threats from outside, or is it going to be few people who are within the democratic setup show anti-democratic behavior, and not only it is overlooked, the worst is defended, saying that, oh, like this is also part of it. So like a lot of times if you see in India here, people confuse with uh, freedom of speech and hate speech, right? While it is true that there is freedom to express your opinions and your whatever you feel, it is not true. It does not say that you can engage in hate speech, right? And so what goes as uh, democratic right or fundamental right in democracy is often a gray area. So you could talk about those things if you that is the kind of scholarship that you want to discuss, that's the kind of expertise that you think you can bring in, you could surely do that, right? uh, Somebody is asking in the chat, is it okay to mention names of such people? Now this is a like this question is asked always, and in almost all sessions that I do, is it all right to mention names? And I've spoken about it before, but in this context I'll tell you, look, you can, but then the better thing is, don't be judgmental. If you are going to mention somebody's name, better be sure that the person is convicted by the courts of the land. So somebody is already behind the bar, that's better. Or something which is old enough where everybody knows where to place blame. Something which is very new, something where we don't know facts of the case yet, and where we don't know who might be responsible for such things. Don't risk writing the names. Second thing is, if you want to write about people who are in already right now in positions of power, I'm going to say exercise even more care, because there are lots of other complications when you talk about people who are already serving in office. What instead you can do is name the position that they hold, because when you say rather than saying a name, if you say a senior MP from Rajasthan, now what you're saying is, I'm not here to blame somebody personally, but then I'm here to point out that people who hold positions of power are supposed to have a respectable behavior. And what is more important is you hold that position of power and not who you are, right? So when you sort of want to engage in this kind of criticism, there's a word for it. It's called constructive criticism, right? Constructive criticism is when you are engaging in criticism not for the blaming, not for the pointing fingers, but in order to learn something. So when you say, okay, I'm going to discuss behavior of this one person, it is not to blame him or her, it is to learn more about what can be done better. And so in that sense, I feel it's very important to make that distinction. And when you criticize people, make sure you are criticizing not for the sake of it, but then you are sort of, criticizing so that there can be a learning at the end of this discussion, right? So that's something you could remember. Now, this whole paragraph, if while I'm speaking, if you have been reading, I don't know if you are able to read, but then in case you are able to read, just once again, let me make it slightly bigger. In case you are able to read it, you could again see here that there are lots of examples that come. So we have given lots of issues here. You could add examples to it and it will become a better write-up in its own. So for example, I am given see, acts which are initially trivial but then later become very big is something like this. You should pay attention to once again. Right? So these are also things that I think you should know. So for example, minor violation, favoritism, ignoring unprofessional conduct, condoning inefficiency, allowing factual inaccuracies, pursuing vendetta actions, tweaking priorities, sugarcoating the press briefs. And there are so many things that can be done. And this is in particularly democracy. This is in particularly anti-democratic behaviors, right? So again, in these cases, now what I want to bring to your notice is that it is important that you must also use the correct language, in the sense even when you're talking about a quotation, even when this is about a quotation and there is a wide scope for interpreting it, if you decide to talk about governance, if you decide to talk about democratic setups, make sure that the language that you use for describing those things actually is the language of that discourse. Do you understand what is discourse? Discourse is the field of that particular expertise or domain expertise, and certain language is used for saying things in the particular field, right? And so these are the ways in which, if you want to discuss anti-democratic behavior, you could do this. Now again, as you said, there's no real end to how much can be discussed with these things. I'll just quickly skip through, and then also in providing quality model answers, what we feel is, as I was saying earlier, even if this is not useful directly for this essay, this year it was, you could use similar language, similar ways of articulation in some other things. So similar things can be taken up from model answers. If you remember well, understand it well, you understand the use of language well, it is possible to use it. And again, people who actually write mains would have written dozens of essays, right? So it's a part of training that you use proper language. If you see now, whatever was said in the first paragraph, now we are moving on to different spheres. Then you can also go to intersectionalities. For example, you're discussing economic sphere, but then you're also intersecting it with technology. So you could also say that, see how Android platforms and Google is now being very aggressive in either bend users to serve its financial interest by arbitrary charging fees. So while you are discussing financial sector or financial sphere, you could also talk about technology. Again, there are lots of ways in which this can be done. Point that I'm trying to get across is, there is no one good model answer. You could take 2 points from here or 3 points from here and write a completely different essay. So take some kind of note from here and write a completely different essay. That is perfectly possible. Just one second. Right, so this was about first essay. Here I want to say something more. One of the things that could have been said in terms of this topic about outsiders and insiders, you could surely one could surely talk about increasing instances of violence within country that can be heinous attacks against women, which resulted in death of many women, or it could also be lynchings, it could also be violence out of communal tensions, and juxtapose it against China's invasion or said invasion in Galwan Valley. Now look, this China issue is when you say, okay, that's an outside threat, that's an outside enemy. But then what is disrupting my peace in my country is not China directly, right? It is an issue. Nobody's denying that it is an issue. But then outside enemies are not always the biggest of the concerns when you want to have peaceful and flourishing human societies. And so, any which of these topics, either ships or trees, it's a similar topic, it's the same topic. It's interesting to connect it with this. So if you see the popular media today, especially the TV media, constantly blames and constantly brings in Pakistan in all discussions. Now that has been like discussed, documented, critiqued very well. So now the whole idea to show that outsiders are threat, China is threat or Pakistan is threat, is also sometimes, and this is this, I'm just like inserting my opinion here. You might not agree with me and might not want to write this, but it is also to say that one should question if these are distractions, wherein when you discuss only things which are outside of our control and outside of common man's control or common person's control, in a way you say, oh, like, you know, what is happening within country need not be discussed because this is a big threat. But then quotations like this, sentences like this, make us understand that while these threats might be sizable, might be something that needs attention, what also needs attention is problems within the country. And I'm sure you would be able to write lots of points, lots of different ways in which this can be discussed. I'm sure what I have already covered you can think of at least like 4 more ways, 5 more ways to discuss the same thing, right? So somebody has said that this PDF should be shared. If you actually, all model answers are shared with all people, but then what I would request e-learning department is to share this here with this group, as well as I think it can be also added to the links, description links in YouTube video. So it will be made available. That's not a problem at all. So this was about the first topic that was asked in this year's UPSC. Let's move on to the next topic. Again, this is a comparison between two topics. Just 1 second. Okay, so the first topic that you can see here is given by UPSC, right? Just 1 second. This topic is given by UPSC this year, which was patriarchy is the least noticed yet the most significant structure of social inequality. So while the caste is being discussed, religion is being discussed, poverty is being discussed, and all these are considered all these are considered as axis of social inequality. Patriarchy is something which doesn't get noticed much, but it is the most significant one. Again, please understand this is an expository essay. Here in this essay, it is saying patriarchy is the most important axis of social inequality. If you think it is not, better not to write this essay. If you want to write this essay, you need to sort of champion their cause. You need to say, yes, yes, patriarchy is everywhere, it is not noticed, and it is very significant. Or rather, the question says it is the most significant structure, right? So you need to then make a very strong case about how gender discrimination is pervasive, it's present everywhere, and it cuts across all society. So even within castes, all caste groups are patriarchal in India. So it's not that being of a certain caste group makes you less or more patriarchal. Patriarchy cuts across all other forms of discrimination. So if you see this, it is also true outside of India. And here again, in this particular essay, there is no mention whether you should talk about India alone, or you could go to, like, you know, sort of international relations, or not international relations, international issues. I'm going to answer that question. You could discuss issues of patriarchy and women empowerment outside of India, but then that should not be the majority of your essay. The majority of your essay must be issues of patriarchy within India, because while if you see outside, patriarchy has, let's say, intersection with race in the US or in the West, or if you see in Europe, lots of times patriarchy might have an intersection with class. So being a rich woman and poor woman also matters, being a white woman and black woman also matters. But then those are not the only axis of inquiries available here in India, or those are not really pertinent, those are not really relevant here. What is more relevant here is caste and class. You could also take some other axis, for example, urban and rural. You could take educated and uneducated. You could take obviously class and caste. And so you could look at the topic from various angles. Now, if you see, the similar topic was given in UPSC in a unique test series. The topic again this year was fight for gender equality, not just a woman's job. Now, this is to say that whenever we talk about gender issues, whenever we talk about anything that about women empowerment, a common perception is, a popular perception is, oh, that women have to sort out. It's like it's women's troubles. It's like women have to fight it out. It's not like everybody's, look, caste is everybody's concern, because uh, caste, women also have caste and men also have caste, so caste is everyone's issue, but in women's empowerment is not everyone's issue. So what we wanted to again write is, and why we gave this topic is, gender equality is not just women's issue, it is also men's issue, because patriarchy is, I mean, this is not the main argument, but then it is also to say that patriarchy is also harmful for men. It presents ideas of toxic masculinity. You should write this down somewhere if you have not heard this phrase before. Toxic masculinity. So this toxic nature of masculine expectations is also harmful for men, right? It's not just harmful for women, and so it's not women's job to fix this. It is everyone's job, because everyone is going to be ultimately better off if we have gender equality. And so if you see, there was a similar thread in the sense that it is to say that it's a significant structure. We didn't say it's the most important or it's the most significant structure, but we are saying that it's everyone's issue. It's not just women's issue. Where the UPSC is saying that it's the most significant structure of social inequity, in so as to say that everybody should take care of it. It's not just women's issue, right? So again, you could see there is a, I mean, similarity between what was asked in UPSC and what was asked in our test series. And so again, a lot of people might already know how to write this essay, well. But then I want to still discuss some of the points, because this might give you some insights about how to write this better, right? So let's look at some of the points. Okay, there's a note here, and again, this is a model answer for for unique test series. But then, because the topics are very similar, I'm going to discuss this, right? In this essay, the major emphasis of the writing should be on addressing why dimensions of the topic. So, why patriarchy is there? Why is it not a woman's job? Why is it the most significant social inequity? So, you shouldn't describe a lot of statistics about how it is different. I mean, you can discuss how, but then that's not the point. The very important thing here is addressing why dimensions of the topic. It means you should try to explain why fight for gender equality is not just a woman's job, or why patriarchy is the most significant structure of social inequity. So that's what is expected. Now remember, this essay does not demand only India-specific arguments. As I said before, it doesn't demand. However, when you write, you should not write an essay where there's no discussion about India. So a majority of your discussion points should be drawn from India, and then you can move on and then say about other countries, about West, or about, you could also talk about Far Eastern countries if you know gender issues in Japanese society or in Chinese society. You could also talk about that, not just about West. But then again, the international issues should be kept sort of in limit. Okay, now here first there are some significance of the first few points are points where it is said that women are considered inferior. However, many studies have shown that they are sometimes comparable to men in the capacities, or sometimes even better than men. Why is this kind of starting, or why is this kind of point required? Because we should not start with the premise that women are inferior and thus they need help. We are saying that, look, it's not even true that women are inferior. Lots of studies have shown that. So some of the examples here are, so for example, multiple research studies have proven that women have stronger immune system than men. It means that nature has made women stronger than a man, but the society or human society in general does not think so. This is evident in sphere of human life, where women are accorded secondary or subsidiary status compared to men. So this is to say that, how did we reach there? We have reached at a point where women have always secondary positions to fill, And this is not even based on evidence. It is evidence many times will suggest that women either are comparable to men or sometimes even stronger, and so must be men at times comparable to women and sometimes better than women. But then the conception, the idea that women are always inferior is not true. And so the whole, see, there are some very specific things that you should say. So things like weaker sex, or saying that accorded secondary or subsidiary status. These are important ways of saying things. Instead, if you say women are considered inferior, although it means the same, it's not the typical jargon which is used in the discourse, right? So you should also be careful about what language you are using. Then you could move on and say that what are the problems. So again, some of those words are here, but then I'm also going to say some words, like for example, tokenism is where for the sake of it you do something, but then really don't mean to bring any change. So like having more women on stage, right? You know, if you have a program, like if you have a official program, having more women on stage is like making it look like, oh look, we are so like gender equal. We also invite women, we also treat them with respect. Then if you see why are those women there on the stage, why are those women are occupying that dais, is actually they have no role to play. They're just like, you know, being asked to sit there as dummies, or like just like, you know, like I mean, like just filling in the position. So this is tokenism. You do something which makes it look like, oh, you're really like taking steps in terms of in direction of gender equality, while that's just a symbolic way of doing it, and in reality it doesn't have any impact. A common example that I always give is, again, because I spoke about these programs on stage and everything, you would see that many times girl students or women are asked to come on stage and give like bouquets and flowers and whatever. So it, to see, you can see girls are walking on stage, but then what are they doing is also very important, right? So it's a tokenism, it's a kind of tokenism where women are used, not used, but then women are sort of our placards are put in a strategic places to make it look like you are gender equal. But then are their opinions being heard? Is there space for women to speak through mic? Is there space for women to discuss and argue with men on the stage? That is very rarely does that happen. So in that sense, I feel it's important to see that is there tokenism in what we are doing for gender equality. uh, Another thing is also similar thing is um, it's considering some jobs are women's jobs. So one thing could be talked about is why there is no equality in terms of gender. Is first thing is it is difficult for women to step out of their homes and engage in paid work, a formal workforce. Even when they wish to do so, there are only certain kinds of jobs that are available to women. Not everything is available to women, right? And so that also needs to be checked. Now if all domains of work are not available to women for taking it up, to say that, oh, gender equality is not there, is not going to solve the issue, right? So we also need to take measures which are concrete, and in reality they actually move us towards gender equality. So uh, okay, let's read some of the points which are given here. Though bottom-up movements are often considered as better in terms of making impact than the top-down solutions, only women-led movements have not delivered on the goal on bringing long-lasting social changes. This is because vested interests in the society refuse to give legitimacy to such efforts made by women. So even when, do you know what is bottom-up and top-down? So top-down is making a policy and say, okay, you want women empowerment, take more money. You want women empowerment, this is the policy that we are unrolling. But in bottom up is actually women coming together to say that changes should be done. Women actually being activists, being lawyers, being taking up positions of power and bringing in change from within by being part of it, and not just asking it from the already male dominated society, right? Now what happens many times, these efforts where women are activists, where women are protesting, they're on roads, it doesn't really reflect in any kind of change, because nobody gives these efforts legitimacy that it requires. So when women protest together, when women sort of come together to talk about their issues, they're not sometimes even heard seriously, right? um, Another thing is, if people who are supposed to be in position of power and who are in position of power and are supposed to do something for it, if they themselves feel that women are weaker members of the society, it is very difficult that they will do anything, or they would listen to these causes empathically, or it is not going to happen. And so it is also important to see that if people in positions of power, mostly men, perceive women as weaker members of society, then it's very difficult to actually bring about change, right? uh, some people prefer the status quo. Do you know what is status quo? Status quo is just a thing. You don't need to change anything because the current systems are actually beneficial for you. They actually work in your favor. The way society has been arranged, it works in your favor. And so nothing much nobody wants any change. One thing is change is difficult. Second is there's also fear for uncertainty, right? Fear for unknown. So if you want to have a different kind, if you want to envision, if you want to have a vision for different kind of society, wherein women have taken up more powerful positions, where women are in decision making positions, because it's never been done before, because it's unknown, there is some kind of fear for unknown, right? But then it's a vicious cycle. If women do not actually take up these positions, then it is going to remain unknown, and because it is going to remain unknown, it is going to continue to incite fear in people's minds. So somewhere it has to be broken, and trust has to be placed with women's decision making power and women's ability to work at formal workplaces, and only then it is going to change, right? Mm. So these are similar issues that have been grouped together. uh, Another reason is the representation of women in agencies working to solve their problems or address the concerns. Now, this is also very important. So there are actually child and women welfare departments are there, funds are given, but then the question remains: are there women who take decisions there? So if you want to improve these situations, but then the decision making is constantly being informed by the patriarchal discourse, and decisions are taken by men, then how is it going to be useful, right? So um, see, for example, women police personnel constitute mere 8.9. So let's say 9% of police force in the country. Can you see, for every 10 officers that are there, only 9 are women, not even 9. So if women are so disproportionately represented in various institutions, to say that it as a society which is made up of formal and informal institutions, we are moving towards gender equality, is not going to be an easy proportion. It's not going to be an easy proposition, right? So you need to be very careful. And again, look, even when you're talking about patriarchy, even when we're talking about gender as a social issue, it is important to present data in of some kind, data in some manner, so that what you're saying also uh, gets further strength, that what you're saying is not just your opinion, but then somebody else also has proven that, somebody else has done a study to prove that. So again, same things can happen in judicial system, economic systems, everywhere, right? uh, Now, if you want to talk about gender, it is very necessary that incorrect socialization and upbringing of children can also create skewed understanding about gender role. So how are we bringing up our children, how are we bringing up girls and boys in our families, is also very, very important. And some very disturbing numbers are here. So for example, according to National Family Health Survey, 52% of Indian women think that it is okay for their husbands to beat them. Now, it is not to say women are stupid. It is to say the kind of socialization, the kind of bringing up that has been done to these women is the reason for it, right? It is not to say that they're not able to see that it's wrong to beat somebody, but then you see how deep it is within them to think that it is okay to be physically violated if it is your husband. And so from where is it coming? Because when these women were young girls, it was told to them, it was they were conditioned in a manner to think that they can be at the receiving end of violence and there is nothing wrong about it, and it's okay. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong about it, but it's okay to be at the receiving end of physical violence. And so these kinds of statistics actually says a lot than just empty discussions about, oh, how women should do better. So anytime when you have an essay topic which roughly falls into GS topics, like this would fall into your GS1 for social issues, it is necessary, it is sort of mandatory to present data. When you present data, it makes a lot of sense to, to argue, and you can argue in better manner. uh, Okay, there are 2, 3 important points here. I'm going to start from the end. Another is isolation policies. So, do you know what are isolation policies? Isolation policies is where you say, okay, women are finding it difficult in society. Is it difficult for women in society? Let's make different provisions for them. Let's have different banks for women. Let's have different compartments in trains for women. Let's have different seats in buses for women. Let's have, so it's not exactly reservation, it is isolation. So you're isolating women as a group because the surveys and studies tell us that women are not really safe in public spaces. So then you create isolated public places. There's still public places, there are still banks and buses and trains, but there's a isolations. Now again, so isolation can only be a temporary solution. It is true that women who are traveling today in buses and trains should not face physical abuse, should not face molestation, should feel secure, should feel safe when they travel. However, that cannot be a permanent solution. Permanent solution is making sure that grown men, adult men, are not abusers. Solution is not to women to learn karate. Solution is not for women to learn self-defense. Solution is for men to not be abusive. And so it is true that for some reason, for some time being, or maybe for decades, you might read isolation policies, but then we should be clear that those are not our solutions. Again, there are some disturbing data about all these things. For example, isolation policies for schools, if you see, girls have better retention rate in girls only schools. So if a school is not a co-ed school, if it's a girls only school, girls do not drop out early in education and they actually complete their school education. While in co-ed schools, the dropout rates of girls is very high. Now you want girls to study, so one quick solution is, okay, then make only girls schools, so that will just like solve all problems. So then girls will be retained in classrooms, they will not drop out, and they will learn, and then they'll become better. While it is true that you should do it because there's nothing other things do not seem to work, but that cannot be your solution to the problem. We should as a society investigate that why is it that when girls are being sent to co-ed schools where both girls and boys study, why is it that they drop out? Is it the parental pressure? Because when girls or boys hit puberty, is it like, you don't, for whatever ideas of purity that you are associated with girls are no more sent to schools? Or is it that there is some kind of harassment, there is some kind of eve teasing that young girls face when they go to school, when they actually travel to school, and that is the reason they are discouraged from going to school? What is it in co-ed schools that is detrimental to the cause of girls, that is not working out for girls? And so it is okay to think that let us have more girls only schools because that is where girls seem to study, but then that cannot be a permanent solution. And this is about everything. The another point in the discourse is, when you have isolation policies, what happens is women are no more able to claim the common public spaces. So for example, if you have different compartment in train which is for women, when women enter general compartments which are not actually men's compartments, which are compartments for again men and women, they receive heavy criticism because they say, now we have given you your own compartment, right? Why are you coming here? Go there. But then look, that is compartment for women, but then this is not compartment for men. This is compartment for both men and women. But then what happens is isolation turns into some kind of complete exclusion. So you started with isolation, saying that okay, we will have different compartments for women because they will be safe there. But then it happens so that women are actually excluded from common spaces. Right. So when you have these policies, you need to be very careful about how they are spanning out in reality. So those are some things that need to be discussed. Again, gender and education system. I spoke about it a lot right now. I mean, that also is always something that needs to be discussed. If women in your country are not as educated, and if as many women are not literate as men are, that's not the representation of failure of women. It's actually representation of failure of society as whole, because like many other discriminations, gender discrimination is very real, and access to education also can be an issue for women, like it is for some caste groups or class groups. So that has to be discussed with what is our collective responsibility in the society, and then it needs to sort of taken forward, right? uh, so there are some concluding remarks here. You should, again, the whole idea is not taking part in discrimination intentionally or unintentionally. So it is one thing to absolutely reject discrimination, but it is another thing also to check if you are being part of discrimination unintentionally. So you might not be like, as a man, maybe you do not beat your wife, but then do you do anything when you see that other women in your family or extended family are being beaten up? So if you choose to keep silence, if you do not voice your opinion as a uh, sort of person with more power in family, then it is as good as taking part in that beating. It is as good as being party to that violence, even if you are not inciting violence personally to anyone. If you do not speak up, if you do not do anything on your personal or professional level, it can be seen almost as taking part in that discrimination, right, or discriminatory practices. So it also matters how do you uh, mm, sort of how do you conduct yourself as a person. Now in this cases, you could have, even though this topic doesn't directly require it, if you remember an instance where either a family member of yours or you yourself have taken a small step in making sure that you're not part of these discriminatory processes, it could you could have written it. But then there's another thing that I want to specifically say here. When you write about your own experiences, any personal anecdotes, any kind of personal accounts which are relevant for the topic, there's a lot of caution that you need to exercise. First thing is, do not write any names. Do not write your school name. Do not write your name of your town, name of your city, name of the university you studied in, name of the college you studied in, because all these things are indicative of who you are. So if you, for example, say, when I was studying in Delhi public school, it tells you about a lot about you. If your parents are the parents who send their child to Delhi public school, or let's say one of the biggest, I mean, one of the largest universities, it says something about who you are. Or if you mention names, and especially if you're writing in English, why mention names? Because it's going to tell about the region from where you come. So you do not want to write anything. And as far as possible, I'm going to also say that do not reveal your gender, even while writing about gender essay, because people who evaluate these essays are also product of their own time. So there might be some biases about caste, class, gender, which are hidden. I'm not saying people are bad, but then sometimes um, these biases run deep in our blood, and then even people are not aware that they are running in with these biases. So if at all you write any personal account, not in this essay, in any essay, make sure that it is personal but without any personal information. So you should not write any personal details, anything about age, education. You should not write anything like that. But then if you are still able to write an experience, still able to put together an anecdote, still able to write a relevant experience without giving out any personal details, please go ahead and do that. There's absolutely no issue in writing that, right? So I felt these two issues, these two topics were important to discuss, not because they were part of our test series, but then we're also very happy because they actually featured in UPSC exam. And so I think this was the discussion that I generally wanted to engage in.
Subscribe the Unique Academy's YouTube channel and press the bell icon for latest updates and videos.